significant milestone. The Dangote Petroleum Refinery yesterday announced that it successfully exported 2 jet fuel cargoes to Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil producer and a leading integrated oil and gas company globally. President of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, in a statement from the management of the $20 billion facility, said, and he revealed the export of jet fuel to Saudi Aramco on Tuesday during a visit by a team from the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, to both the refinery and Dangote Fertilizer Limited in Ibeju-Lekki, Lagos. Dangote said exporting products to the global markets, especially Saudi Aramco, was made easy because of his refinery's world-class standards and advanced technologies. Also, a federal high court in Abuja yesterday fixed March 18 for ruling in the notice of preliminary objection brought by the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited against the suit filed by Dangote Refinery. All right, I think this week, Dangote Refinery has recorded a number of wins. We started off over the weekend with the dropping of oil prices from I believe it was 890, was it 860 to 9 something to 890. I think it was 960 to 890. And now we're talking about them exporting jet fuel to Saudi Aramco. Wins there. Vimba, your take on this story.
You know, it's great to see that despite the initial hiccups that we witnessed last year, that things are coming together for Alhaji Aliko Dangote and for the Dangote refineries. In his message around the success of being able to export jet fuel to Saudi Aramco when he hosted NESG, I like the message that Dangote delivered, which I feel the theme was charity begins at home. What Dangote was saying is that these are the possibilities if we are able to protect our local industries. He gave several examples where he said there's no country that doesn't do one or two things, have a few policies that ensure that certain strategic local industries are allowed to flourish. And of course, this is on the back of him having gone to court to say that a number of people should not have import licenses for petroleum. He gave the example of Benin, where he said that his own cement manufacturing plant is just close to the border, but Benin has a strict policy of not importing cement. So this just goes to show the spirit that he's trying to inspire locally. Now, what are the conversations around this? I believe that, especially most recently with Donald Trump coming into office and tariff wars taking place all around the world, the issue of protectionism has almost been villainized. But I think every responsible government has a duty to ensure that certain strategic local industries are protected. And it's not unique. It has been used as a tool to develop industries globally. I always love to use the example of the Southeast Asian tigers, Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, who were able to build their countries and create huge businesses like Samsung, LG, the bank HSBC was birthed in Hong Kong, off of these protectionist policies that said that, yes, we will trade with the world, but there are certain industries that we are going to protect for our own people and the benefit of our own economies. Closer to home, you see the same example in an economy like South Africa, where South Africa says, no, we're not going to import second-hand vehicles. We're going to ensure that everything is manufactured locally. So I think there's a great conversation to be had about how we can strike a balance between protecting certain industries here in Nigeria and, of course, still opening ourselves up to doing enough business with the world. And, of course, just maybe an opportunity for us to look back at President Buhari's Made in Nigeria policy and see what didn't work, what can work, and what we can move into current times and apply so that we can support Nigerian industries.
Support Nigerian industries. Dr. Abati, your take on this story.
Okay, look, a number of basic issues. One, the fact that the Dangote Refinery, we started with 350,000 barrels of production initially. Now that has gone up to 550,000 barrels of production of crude oil and other, affiliate products per day. Means that the vision of Aliko Dangote in setting up that refinery is working. The figure is 550,000 barrels per day as of today, not 650,000. But in any case, what we know is that the Dangote Refinery is the single largest single-train refinery in the world. And more than that, it produces the best grade of fuel, petrochemicals, Brent crude, finished products in the world today. So I think it's a major achievement for Nigeria and for the Dangote Refinery that Saudi Aramco, which is the world's largest oil producer and the leading integrated oil, and gas company in the world, is now buying from Dangote Refinery. What it speaks to is the quality of the product. Jet fuel, in this instance, not necessarily even fuel, from that particular facility. Also, I think it should be considered a thing of pride to Nigeria that the US, Brazil, and other countries are buying from this same Dangote Refinery. It's just a plain restatement, establishment of the success that has been made by that refinery. That's number one. Number two is a point made about private involvement, private sector development. Look, the Nigerian government for years had not been able to make any progress with the Warri Refinery, the Port Harcourt Refinery, the Kaduna Refinery. And here comes a private investor, over $20 billion of investment, and then Nigeria has suddenly become the destination where other countries, including Saudi Arabia, the world's biggest power in the oil and gas sector, is now buying fuel, jet fuel. I think, again, that's a very remarkable achievement. And it gives strength, power, reason, rationale to those who argue that, in fact, all these Nigerian-owned refineries and all that should be sold, even if as scrap, to private investors. We have people who are just as talented as Alhaji Aliko Dangote, who can turn those refineries around and create a better competitive environment with what God has, gifted this country with, and drive this country away from the cost of oil. Now, apart from the importance of the private sector, there's this subsisting suit between the NNPCL and Dangote Refinery, dealing basically with the fact that there are many players in that sector who are still importing fuel. And the Dangote Refinery had gone to court. NNPCL has also gone to court. The dispute is about, look, if you have a refinery, investors in the sector should buy from domestic source, not to continue to import. I think that this is a problem, that can be resolved. The next time they are meeting in court is March 16. But I don't think that this is a matter that should be resolved through litigation. They can be resolved administratively, especially now that the midstream and downstream regulatory agency, the NUPRC, has also invoked a critical section of the Petroleum Industry Act, saying specifically, that the PIA requires domestic refiners, producers of crude oil, to dedicate a certain percentage of what they produce to the domestic market. All of these issues can be resolved, because everywhere in the world, there is a principle of protection of domestic industries. When Alhaji Aliko Dangote was taking Niyu Yusuf and his team, that's the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, this point was made about how to encourage domestic industries. We have spent weeks on this program since January 20, discussing how Donald Trump is trying to protect domestic industries. Protectionism has its limits. I don't want to go into the theory of that. But it is important that government encourages, the private sector, encourages the domestic industry to drive economic growth, to create jobs and opportunities within the economy. So I think this is a major triumph for the Dangote refinery. It's also a major triumph for the private sector. And I think that the Nigerian government, under President Tinubu's watch, should take his lead from this and then resolve all this unnecessary litigation over imports and production that Nigeria is still dealing with.
Absolutely. But I'll just speak very briefly on that, since you've both established the point as to the importance of this history-making move by Dangote Refinery to be able to export 2 cargoes, and it's estimated as about 130 million barrels of jet fuel to Saudi Aramco. This is significant, as already we mentioned, because Saudi Aramco, or Saudi Arabia as a nation, is the biggest exporter of crude to the world. Now, we've seen this happen in the past. In 2019, at least from my last recollection, why would a country like Saudi Arabia be importing when they are such large producers and biggest exporters to the rest of the world? Well, in 2019, when their energy industry was hit by unprecedented attacks, they had to open up in order to protect their nation to imports. At that time, of course, Nigeria was not even part of the conversation because we didn't have the facility to do so. So the fact that years later, about 5-6 years later, we are now able to be a part of that conversation through the Dangote refinery and are able to export oil to them is a big deal. Beyond that is also the testament to the fact that it demonstrates that the quality of oil from the Dangote refinery, as has been said a number of times, is truly globally accepted. I say this because for jet fuel, there are certain standards that must be met for it to be used by, to be exportable to other countries. And so they've been able to meet that. So any argument around the quality of, products coming out from the Dangote refinery or not can be stalled at this point. And then, of course, the celebration around the fact that in a very short time, they've been able to ramp up production. All this to say that as a result of the efforts, the doggedness, the resilience against all odds by Alhaji Dangote with the refinery, he's been able to make significant progress. Now, if you look at that side by side with the state of our national refineries, you wonder why we're not also able to, make such progress. Because over the years, a lot of money has been pumped into that sector with nothing to show for it. And now we have a private investor making the moves to ensure that Nigeria is able to take its place on the global stage in the oil and gas industry. Beyond that, the bigger conversation, which he used the opportunity for that visit to talk about, is how, the fact that despite all the work that is being done, there's a lot of resistance. Only a few days back, a lot of newspapers carried the news about how oil marketers, including the NNPC, were still importing. In fact, analysts put the worth of oil that's been exported in the last few days at 5.5 trillion naira. One of the benefits of the Dangote refinery coming on stream was the lack of dependence, at least with regards to forex, because of oil imports. If we're able to meet local production such that the Dangote refinery is able to ramp up to 550,000 barrels per day, why are we still importing? I understand the ideology behind it. In fact, the reason why they're in court is that they're saying that the Dangote refinery could potentially monopolize the market, and that would not all go well for price in terms of they then have the control, and at any point in time, even though right now they've been able to bring down the price then becomes a big deal. So in order to break that monopoly, because we're not able to provide, produce in our own local refinery, other oil marketers are then saying that they have a choice of free market economy to import these products. However, the conversation then is, how do we balance it? Free market versus protecting local industries. Niyi Yusuf, the chairman of the NESG himself, said during that visit that the $1 trillion economy that the president is hoping to achieve can only be achieved if there's significant domestic investment. Dangote Refinery says that they contribute about 50 to 52% of their profit to the economy. So I think it's important for this conversation to be held broader. Where do we find the balance? That balance of a free market and protecting. Don't forget the number of jobs that could potentially be created or lost in the event that our local industries are not protected. This is why there's an argument for protecting our local investments, like the Dangote Refinery. He cited a number of countries who continue to do this, including our neighbors, Benin Republic, with their cement and not having importation or into their country in order to protect local jobs. So we've talked about this a number of times. It's perhaps time to explore or come to the table and talk about this. There's a lot of gains made from the Dangote Refinery coming on stream, and we have seen that against all odds, they've continued to push forward. Well, the conversation definitely continues.